The 1967 Six-Day War was a military conflict between Israel and a coalition of Arab states that took place from June 5 to June 10 in 1967. The war was a result of escalating tensions between Israel and its Arab neighbors, particularly Egypt and Syria, over the control of the Sinai Peninsula, Golan Heights, and West Bank. The war was fought on three fronts: the Sinai Peninsula, the Golan Heights, and the West Bank, and ended with a decisive victory for Israel, which gained control over these territories. The war had a significant impact on the region and the world, and its aftermath continues to shape the political situation in the Middle East today. It marked a major turning point in the Arab-Israeli conflict, solidifying Israel's control over the Sinai Peninsula, Golan Heights, and West Bank, and shifting the balance of power in the region. The rapid and decisive victory of Israel in the war challenged conventional military wisdom and demonstrated the importance of innovative tactics and technology in modern warfare. The war led to the rise of Arab nationalism and a shift in the political landscape of the Middle East, as many Arab countries began to reassess their relationship with Israel and the West. The aftermath of the war and the continued Israeli occupation of the captured territories has been a major source of tension in the region, and has played a significant role in shaping the current political and military landscape in the Middle East. The war had a lasting impact on international relations, as it heightened tensions between the Soviet Union and the United States, and further complicated the already complex web of alliances and relationships in the region. The tensions between Israel and its Arab neighbors in the years leading up to the 1967 Six-Day War were rooted in a number of historical, political, and religious factors. Some of the key issues that contributed to the tensions included the aftermath of the 1948 Arab-Israeli War, which resulted in the displacement of hundreds of thousands of Palestinians and created a lasting sense of resentment among Arab states towards Israel. The continued presence of Israeli armed forces in the Sinai Peninsula, which was seen by Egypt as a violation of its sovereignty. The threat posed by Palestinian Fedayeen guerrilla groups who carried out raids against Israel from bases in neighboring Arab countries. The increasing alignment of Arab states with the Soviet Union, and the corresponding shift in the military balance of power in the region. The rise of pan-Arab nationalism, which sought to unite the Arab world under a single political and cultural identity. These tensions came to a head in May 1967, when Egypt mobilized its troops in the Sinai Peninsula and closed the Straits of Tiran to Israeli shipping, creating a direct military threat to Israel and setting the stage for the outbreak of the Six-Day War. The blockade of the Straits of Tiran was a significant event leading up to the 1967 Six-Day War. The Straits of Tiran is a narrow waterway located between the Sinai Peninsula and the Arabian Peninsula that provides the only access for Israeli shipping to the Red Sea. In May 1967, Egypt, under the leadership of President Gamal Abdel Nasser, closed the Straits of Tiran to Israeli shipping, effectively cutting off Israel's access to the Red Sea and creating a direct military threat to the country. This move was seen as a provocative act by Israel, and it heightened tensions in the region and helped to set the stage for the outbreak of the Six-Day War. The closure of the Straits of Tiran was a key factor in the decision by Israel to launch a preemptive strike against Egypt and its allies, as it was seen as a direct threat to the country's security and economic stability. The opening of the Straits of Tiran remains a key issue in the ongoing Arab-Israeli conflict, and continues to shape the political and military landscape of the region. The mobilization of troops was a critical factor leading up to the 1967 Six-Day War. In May 1967, Egypt, under the leadership of President Gamal Abdel Nasser, mobilized its troops in the Sinai Peninsula and deployed a large number of tanks and armored vehicles along the border with Israel. This was seen as a direct threat to the security of Israel, and it heightened tensions in the region and helped to set the stage for the outbreak of the war. The mobilization of troops was also a key factor in the decision by Israel to launch a preemptive strike against Egypt and its allies, as the country's leaders believed that the presence of a large Egyptian force in the Sinai posed a direct threat to its security. The mobilization of troops by Egypt and other Arab states, as well as by Israel, was a significant factor in the escalation of tensions in the region and in the eventual outbreak of the Six-Day War. The opening attacks by Israel were the initial military actions taken by the country in the 1967 Six-Day War. On June 5, 1967, Israel launched a series of coordinated airstrikes against the air forces of Egypt, Jordan, and Syria. The strikes caught the Arab states by surprise and were highly effective, effectively neutralizing their air power and clearing the way for a ground invasion. The opening attacks by Israel were part of a larger military strategy aimed at achieving a quick and decisive victory in the war. Israel's leaders believed that a swift and overwhelming victory was necessary to secure its borders and protect its people from the perceived threat posed by the Arab states. The opening attacks by Israel marked the start of the Six-Day War and set the stage for the events that would follow. The rapid and decisive victory of Israel in the opening phase of the war challenged conventional military wisdom and demonstrated the importance of innovative tactics and technology in modern warfare. The Israeli advance into the Sinai Peninsula, Golan Heights, and West Bank was a key outcome of the 1967 Six-Day War. Following the successful opening airstrikes, Israeli ground forces launched a series of offensives into the Sinai Peninsula, Golan Heights, and West Bank, quickly defeating the Arab armies and capturing these territories. The Israeli advance into the Sinai Peninsula was aimed at neutralizing the military threat posed by Egypt, which had mobilized its troops in the region and closed the Straits of Tiran. The capture of the Sinai Peninsula also secured Israel's southern border and opened up access to the Red Sea. The Israeli advance into the Golan Heights was aimed at neutralizing the military threat posed by Syria, which had used the high ground to launch attacks against Israeli settlements in the valley below. The capture of the Golan Heights was a key factor in the eventual signing of a ceasefire agreement between Israel and Syria. The Israeli advance into the West Bank was aimed at consolidating its control over the territory and ensuring the security of its people. The capture of the West Bank also gave Israel control over the holy city of Jerusalem, which had been divided between Israeli and Jordanian control since the 1948 Arab-Israeli War. The Israeli advance into these territories had far-reaching implications for the region and the world, and remains a key issue in the ongoing Arab-Israeli conflict. The occupation of these territories and the subsequent settlement of Israeli citizens in the West Bank and Golan Heights continues to be a source of tension between Israel and the Arab world. The ceasefire agreement was a formal agreement signed between the warring parties to end the 1967 Six-Day War. The ceasefire was signed on June 10, 1967, and marked the end of the hostilities between Israel and the Arab states of Egypt, Jordan, and Syria. The ceasefire agreement was negotiated by the United Nations and was based on United Nations Security Council Resolution 242, which called for the withdrawal of Israeli armed forces from territories occupied during the war and for the respect for the sovereignty, territorial integrity, and political independence of every state in the region. The ceasefire agreement was a significant moment in the history of the Arab-Israeli conflict, as it marked the end of the first direct military confrontation between Israel and its Arab neighbors. The agreement helped to ease tensions in the region and paved the way for further diplomatic efforts aimed at resolving the conflict. However, the ceasefire agreement did not bring an end to the underlying causes of the conflict, and the situation in the region remains unresolved to this day. The ongoing occupation of the territories captured by Israel during the Six-Day War, as well as the continued settlement of Israeli citizens in these areas, continues to be a major source of tension between Israel and the Arab world. The territorial gains made by Israel in the 1967 Six-Day War were significant and had far-reaching implications for the region and the world. Israel captured the Sinai Peninsula from Egypt, the Golan Heights from Syria, and the West Bank, including East Jerusalem, from Jordan. The territorial gains made by Israel increased the country's size by a factor of 3 and brought over 1 million Palestinians under Israeli control. The capture of the West Bank, including East Jerusalem, was particularly significant, as it gave Israel control over the Holy City, which had been divided between Israeli and Jordanian control since the 1948 Arab-Israeli War. The territorial gains made by Israel in the 1967 Six-Day War were seen as a decisive victory for the country and a major blow to the Arab world. The gains also marked the beginning of the Israeli occupation of the West Bank, East Jerusalem, and the Golan Heights, which continues to this day and remains a major source of tension between Israel and the Arab world. The territorial gains made by Israel in the 1967 Six-Day War also had a profound impact on the region and the world, and continue to shape the ongoing conflict in the Middle East. The territorial gains and the continued occupation of the West Bank and East Jerusalem have been major stumbling blocks in the peace process, and the issue remains one of the most complex and contentious in the region.